Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. My daughter took out a $90 million loan in my name. What I did shocked her. My name is Grace Miller, I'm 64 years old, and I live in the south suburbs of Chicago, in a small bungalow with blue shutters, tucked away at the end of a quiet street where children still play ball until nightfall. I bought this house for cash, piece by piece, after 40 years of service to others. I was a nurse at Cook County General Hospital, one of the oldest and toughest public institutions in the city. I saw broken bodies, tearful families, unexpected miracles, and silent goodbyes in emergency room corridors. I worked weekends, Christmases, and stormy days, never complaining. Because there was someone who mattered more than anything, my daughter, Lana. I raised her alone, after the death of my husband, Andrew, a gentle and upright man, who always called me, my light. He left us too soon. Lung cancer. He had never smoked, but he worked in a chemical plant in Gary, Indiana. Back then, there was no talk of safety or security. He was 39. When he died, Lana was only 6 years old. And that day, I understood that I no longer had the right to be weak. No longer had the right to give up. I had to be both tenderness and authority, the warmth of the home and the pillar of the roof. I sacrificed everything for her. My time, of course. I was often absent when she came home from school, but I always left a note on the table, a hot meal in the fridge, and a stuffed animal on her pillow. My savings. I put off the idea of traveling, redoing my kitchen, buying a new car. Everything went into his education. But more than anything, my dreams. I would have liked to go back to school. To open a small home care practice. But every penny, every hour, every breath went to Lana. I would get up at 5 a.m., take 2 buses and a train to get to the hospital. I worked night shifts, double shifts, and last-minute replacements. I would sometimes come home with back pain so severe I couldn't lie down without groaning. But I always smiled when she opened the door. And it paid off, or so I thought. She had everything I didn't: a private school education, piano lessons, field trips to Washington and Boston, a degree in international finance from the University of Michigan, and a first job at a major Chicago firm, where she quickly rose through the ranks. She met Trevor, a confident man, always dressed to the nines, with real estate ambitions and an obsession with success. They got married in a mansion, with 150 guests, a gourmet buffet, a luxury photographer, and me, in the front row, with tears in my eyes. Proud. Amazed. Naive. She had a great career, an apartment in a glass tower in the city center, designer bags, cocktails on the terrace with well-dressed friends. A world that seemed so far from my own. I didn't always understand his choices. But I told myself that this was what success was all about. I told myself that I had done the right thing. That I had been a good mother. But I would never have believed that this girl, the one I carried, raised, protected, would steal from me. Not just money. My trust. My name. My dignity. It was a Thursday morning in May, one of those warm days when the air smells of damp earth and blooming lilacs. The sun was gently peeping through the curtains in my kitchen, and I was making coffee, as I did every morning, listening to the steady ticking of the wall clock. Everything seemed calm, ordinary. Then I heard a knock at the door. It was the postman, a young boy from the neighborhood, with a brown envelope in his hand. Recommended for Mrs. Grace Miller, he said with a polite smile. I thanked him without thinking twice and placed the envelope on the table without opening it right away. I thought it might be a pension statement, or some formality related to health insurance. Nothing urgent. But something, in the weight of the paper, in the rigor of the printed letterhead, pushed me to open the envelope. And there. I saw the nightmare. Preliminary notice of seizure of property, default on several loans taken out in your name, totaling $90,250,000. The paper slipped from my fingers. I thought I'd misread it. That it was a mistake, a fake, a letter intended for another Grace Miller. I sat up slowly, my knees buckling as if my entire body had just been drained of blood. The coffee maker continued to boil in the background, but I couldn't hear it anymore. My eyes were unfocused, my throat dry. I'd never taken out a loan of this amount. Not even 1/100th of it. I've always paid my bills on time. I'm from the generation that keeps receipts in a tin box and records expenses in a small notebook. I am not a woman of debt. So I said to myself, it's an administrative error. A computer mix-up. I grabbed my jacket, my keys, the mail, and rushed to the First United Bank branch on 63rd Boulevard. Upon entering, I waited for 30 long minutes in a leather armchair, my palms sweating, my eyes glued to the screen displaying personal loan offers. Ironic. When the advisor finally arrived, a man of about 40, in an impeccable suit, his voice neutral and too gentle for the gravity of the moment, I handed him the letter without a word. He read it, frowning slightly, then opened several files on his computer. He typed quickly, without looking at me. Then he stopped, looked up, and his face froze in an expression of unease mixed with compassion. Mrs. Miller. I'm sorry, but everything is in order. The loan is in your name. I leaned forward, breathless. It's not possible. I didn't sign anything. I don't even know what these sums correspond to. He turned his screen to show me the scanned documents, contracts, forms, legal annexes. And most importantly, a signature. But signature. The one I've been using for 30 years. The same one on my ID card, my checks, my old student loans. I remained silent, my heart pounding in my chest like a war drum. You see, the anti-fraud unit checked the documents. The address, the social security number, the linked bank accounts. Everything matches. It's definitely you, Ms. Miller. He looked embarrassed, almost guilty, as if he were delivering an irrevocable sentence to me. But I knew it. I never signed that. I walked out of the bank like a ghost, unable to feel the ground beneath my feet. The wind had picked up, but I couldn't feel it. Everything was blurry, unreal. I stopped on a public bench in front of a convenience store and stared into space. Someone stole from me. Used me. Destroyed me. And there was only one person in this world who knew all my personal information, my social security number, my exact signature. My daughter. That night, I called Lana. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I simply told him. Come home. It's important. There was silence on the other end of the line. Then a brief. Okay. I'm coming. When I hung up, I stood there in the middle of the kitchen, staring blankly, one hand resting on the table as if to anchor me to reality. I could have confronted her over the phone. But I wanted to look her in the eye. I wanted to know if my daughter still had an ounce of conscience in her gaze. An hour later, I heard her arrive. The dull roar of a luxury engine stopped in front of the house. Through the window, I saw the black Range Rover pull into the driveway her father had paved himself 20 years earlier. She got out of the car confidently, as if she were coming for an informal dinner. She was wearing a tight, burgundy designer dress, probably expensive. Her 12-centimeter heels clicked against the concrete. She smelled of a sophisticated, floral, and heady perfume, the kind you see in department store windows but never dare touch. Her nails were perfectly manicured. Her sleek hair fell like a waterfall over her shoulders. She had the bearing of a woman who knows she's a magnet. But that evening, I no longer saw my daughter. I saw a foreigner. She came in without a word, put her leather bag on the sideboard, and looked at me as if she were waiting for an explanation, as if I were the one who owed her something. I didn't say a word. I went to get the letter from the drawer of the cabinet near the landline. I placed it on the table in front of her, without trembling. She recognized her immediately. She paled. Very slightly. Barely. But I know every micro-expression on her face. That slight stiffening of her chin. That slightly faster blink of her eyes. She knew. She crossed her arms. Slowly. Then she said, in a controlled voice. I can explain everything to you. No panic. No tears. No remorse. She didn't deny it. Not for a second. She sat down with ease, as if she were taking a seat in a business meeting. Then, in a calm, almost condescending tone. Trevor wanted to buy a house in Beverly Hills. But the bank refused because of his financial history. So I thought we could use your name. Just temporarily. Until we could sell at a profit. You wouldn't have had to do anything, Mom. As if she were doing me a favor. As if I were the lucky mother of a clever girl. She spoke to me as if she had borrowed my car without asking. Not like she took $90 million on my behalf. Not as if she had betrayed me, stolen from me, exposed me to ruin. I stood there, frozen. Blood pounded in my temples. My hands were freezing, but my body burned from the inside. I stared at my child, the little girl I'd spoon-fed, tucked under a flowery blanket, taken to school every morning in her pigtails and pink satchel. And now, I didn't recognize her anymore. You forged my signature? I whispered, almost speechless. She blinked, as if it were a formality. It wasn't much. Your handwriting was copied onto some documents. Trevor knows someone who does that. But it's all covered up. No one's going to notice. I felt my stomach turn. You stole my identity, Lana. You stole me. You ruined my life. She raised her hands, as if to calm a disgruntled customer. No. Listen, we'll pay everything back. Trevor has a friend who's a really solid investor. He'll put some money back. And I swear, this is just a rough patch. We'll sort everything out. You won't have to do anything. You won't have to do anything. These words echoed in my head over and over again. As if I were a pawn, a figurehead. As if my existence was just a tool for their ambitions. I wanted to scream. To break everything. To scream at her how much she had broken me, betrayed me, humiliated me. But I did nothing. I stood there frozen. Frozen by pain. By shame. By the collapse of a maternal love. And at that moment, I understood. This wasn't a woman in front of me. Not an overwhelmed wife or a professional under pressure. She was a spoiled, bright but unaware child who had never learned consequences. And it was my fault. I had wanted to protect her from everything. From the pain, from the loss, from the harshness of the world. But by sparing her so much, I had led her to believe that anything was permitted. And now, I had to fix that. The next day, I got up before sunrise. Not because I hadn't slept, I had slept, a strange, icy sleep, as if my body had shut down to keep from bursting into tears. But something in me had died in the night, and something else had been born, a cold, firm, irreversible will. I didn't have breakfast. No coffee. No radio. I just put on my coat, grabbed my bag, and stepped out into the gray morning. The sky was overcast, the wind heavy with humidity, and my footsteps echoed through the still deserted streets. I went to the bank, then to my notary. I emptied my accounts. My life savings, my small certificates of deposit, my retirement plan, even the savings book I'd kept, just in case, for the funeral. Everything I'd put aside with military discipline, thinking it would one day be useful to Lana, her children, her projects. I didn't leave anything behind. I transferred them to a secure account, inaccessible without my two-factor authentication. Then, at the notary's office, I revoked the power of attorney I had given Lana 5 years earlier, just in case something happened to me. Ironic. I changed my will. She was no longer the beneficiary. I replaced her with an organization that provides scholarships to young girls from single-parent families. Girls like her. But who would know the value of sacrifice? Finally, I went to the police station, my hands shaking, but my eyes straight. I filed a complaint for identity theft. And in the official report, black on white, printed in clear letters, appeared my daughter's name. Lana Miller, suspect principal. I walked out of there silently, as if after surgery. A part of me had been ripped away. And yet, another part was breathing for the first time in a long time. But I didn't stop there. I came home, quietly closed the front door, and sat down at my desk where I wrote my birthday cards and Christmas letters. I took a sheet of writing paper, the good ivory paper I kept for important occasions. I picked up a fountain pen. And I began to write. It was not a threatening letter. Nor a letter of revenge. It was a letter of truth. Work. When I first held you in my arms, I was terrified and amazed. You were tiny, so fragile. And yet, you already had my whole heart. I promised that day to always protect you. I never imagined that one day I would have to protect myself from you. What you did is beyond imagination. You didn't just make a mistake. It wasn't clumsiness. It was betrayal. You used my name, my credit, my trust, as if they had no value. You took advantage of my silence, my love, my lack of judgment. You took what I had built brick by brick, pain by pain. And you risked it all, for a dream of luxury and appearances. But above all, you have proven that you have never learned what I wanted to teach you. That dignity is worth more than success. That truth weighs more than money. Today I will give you the lesson that I never imposed on you, and which perhaps could have saved you earlier. That of responsibility. I contacted the authorities. I filed a complaint. You will have to answer for your actions, Lana. Not because I don't love you anymore. But because I love you enough to not let you destroy yourself anymore. And to no longer let myself be destroyed in silence. It is not justice that punishes you. This is the life you chose. If one day you return, let it be with empty hands, but a heart full of truth. Your mother. Grace. I folded it carefully. Put it in an envelope. Not to scare him. Not to hurt. But to give him back his own conscience, black and white. I went out. And I slipped it into her mailbox, at the address she'd given me 6 months earlier. The glass building she called her new life. And I left without looking back. Lana tried to run away. At first, she simply cut off contact. No more calls. No more messages. Her number rang off the hook. Her bank account had been emptied within days. The luxury loft where she and Trevor lived had been emptied, too, furniture, artwork, even the curtains. She left Chicago in the middle of the night, according to neighbors. A suitcase in hand. The rest? Vanished into the shadows. Trevor, on the other hand, had slipped away much faster. Just days after I filed my complaint, he boarded a flight to Panama City, ostensibly for a real estate investment project. In reality, he was fleeing justice. It was later learned that he had ties to a money laundering network. Nothing was proven, but everything suggested this wasn't his first shady operation. Lana, however, was not so lucky. After 3 weeks on the run, inconspicuous hotels, Airbnb rentals under ridiculous pseudonyms, she was located in Cleveland, in a $49 a night motel, with deep circles under her eyes, an ill-fitting wig, and a forged ID in her bag. She was no longer the shiny woman in the designer dress. She was just a broken girl, facing herself. She was arrested. Tried. Publicly. I didn't attend the entire trial. Only the key sessions. I didn't want to persist. But I testified. Clearly. Firmly. I recounted the facts. I showed the documents. I spoke of the betrayed trust. The room was silent. Even the judge looked down at one point. Lana stood there, head bowed, hands clasped, dressed in a simple suit, nothing like the arrogance of the past. And against all odds. She didn't try to defend herself. She admitted the facts. She said, in a low but audible voice, "I am responsible. I have no excuse." Thanks to my testimony, and probably because I didn't demand a prison sentence, she avoided incarceration. But the sentence was harsh. She was ordered to repay the loan in full, under financial supervision, with immediate seizure of all her assets. His house, his accounts, his cars, his jewelry, his luxury clothes, everything was seized and put up for sale. She also received 1,200 hours of community service in a work rehabilitation program. She lost everything. Her friends? They magically disappeared. The ones who invited her to galas, who posed with her on Chicago rooftops, who wrote "Queen" under her Instagram photos, none of them were there. Today, Lana lives in a small, modest apartment in Cicero, on the second floor of a walk-up building above a tire shop. She works as an accountant in a small NGO that helps families get out of over-indebtedness. Biting irony, isn't it? She who had plunged her own mother into an abysmal debt. She, who believed she would never touch a keyboard without a touchscreen, now spends her days calculating the cost of poverty. She writes to me sometimes. Handwritten letters. No pretense. No demands. No lies. Simple words, sometimes shaky, but sincere. "Mom, I don't know how to ask you for forgiveness yet. But I want to tell you that I understand. I'm not trying to erase the harm I've done. I just want to become someone you can look at without shame. One day, I hope you will be proud of the woman I will become. I love you. Even if I don't deserve it." The work. I keep his letters in a box under my bed. I don't reread them often. But I don't throw them away. Because forgiveness, for me, isn't a reflex. It's a journey. And me? I live peacefully today. My house is still there, modest but standing. I've taken up gardening again, the kind I'd abandoned during the long years of hospitalization and saving. I'm planting tomatoes, peonies, and fresh herbs. I teach first aid classes at the local parish. Simple actions. Actions that save lives. Like those I would have liked to pass on to my daughter, differently. I'm not naive anymore. But I'm not bitter. Because I learned this. Being a mother does not mean sacrificing your dignity. To love does not mean to be betrayed. Sometimes you have to let go, to allow the other person to get back up. And what I did that day when I dared to say no, where I chose truth over blind loyalty, shocked her. And maybe saved me too.